Okay, hello again. This is a bit more about the Eight of Cups. Last one was about the Eight of Cups, and I talked about the fact that the fellow's walking away from something. But in this video, I want to talk about the fact that we've got 5 cups here and 3 cups here and what we can do with that. And part of what I want to suggest is that one good and effective way of learning to read cards and learning to understand what cards mean is you ask yourself questions about the card and pay attention to the thoughts that come into your mind, because you're going to find that you will answer your own questions, and in this way you become independent. And in this way, because you came up with the understanding, or you developed the understanding, it's yours, and you're always going to remember it and be able to make use of it. It's not as if you're learning what somebody else said, because it's always harder to apply somebody else's meaning or somebody else's understanding to a question that you yourself are answering. There are 2 points I wanted to make first. The one is that I started a radio show. So if you go to www.blogtalkradio.com/John-Ballantrae, you'll find at the moment I'm doing Monday afternoon at 3 and Thursday night at 11. And it's a half-hour show, and you can call in and I just talk and we discuss stuff, and there's a chat room. So there are archives as well if you want to listen to some of the older episodes. That's part of it. And the second thing is that some of you know that I put together the Tarot Home Study course, but I want to do a follow-up now. And so I sort of want to know what people reading or learning to read or struggling to learn to read, what kind of stuff you want to know, what kind of questions you have, or what kind of difficulties you've come up against, or problems that you have been able to solve or haven't been able to solve. So if you have information or questions that you think might be helpful for other people to know the answers to, send me an email, blntr@yahoo.com, and I'll put something together. So here we have the 8 of Cups, and okay, if you were to design the 8 of Cups, you could just put 8 cups in a row. As you can see, I ran out of space. I put the 8th one down here, and the thing is, if you do it like that, then you need to know numerology, I think, because you can look at this row of 8 cups and it really doesn't tell you that much. There's not a lot you can do with it, unless it's like 8 steps or 8 points that have to be considered. Or maybe you put 4 and 4. But even then, it doesn't really tell you that much, unless you know numbers. And I think it's a good idea to not be dependent on other systems when it comes to reading tarot cards. Then I thought you could do the 6 and this 6 is not bad, because you get 3 and 2 on top and 1 on top, and it sort of fits together quite neatly. But then you get 2 left over. So the 6 is a triangle that's pointing up. That's okay. Maybe give you an idea of look to the higher side, for instance, or climb high and look down on the problem. But what do you do with these 2 that are left over? And there isn't really I don't know. You can maybe do something with it, but so somehow the 5 and the 3 together, or separate rather, it sort of makes an awful lot of sense to have 5 cups and 3 cups, partly because the 3 are here and then the 2 sit on top, and the 2 are here and the 1 sits on top. So we do, there does seem to be something kind of logical we could say about having 5 and 3 cups to make the 8. So what we do then, I'm saying that you ask yourself a question. So what we can do is we can start with these 5 cups here, and we can ask ourselves, okay, there are 5 cups. What can that mean, or what can that be telling us, or what could that indicate or show? So we're thinking about the number 5 and what 5 things go together, or what does the number 5 remind us of? And there's 5, if I can see, because here we've got 4 fingers and a thumb, but it's sort of a hand, right? So we can, for instance, say, okay, and the method is, okay, I ask myself a question and then I wait for the answer to come. So maybe one day I think, okay, there are 5 cups here. What could the 5 mean? And maybe I can't think of anything. And then a couple of days later, I think, oh, wait a minute, 5 maybe is a hand. And so then you think about the hand and what it can represent. So it might make you think of writing. There's a nice little pen and I can write with it. So the hand can represent communication. So this fellow's walking away from 5. So maybe he's looking for a new way to communicate. Or if we think that with the hand and the opposable thumb that means human beings can do things that animals can't. It might be that the 5 makes you think of particular skill or ability, right? Because we can produce things, we can make things. So the person is walking away from the 5, which could be it can be telling us that he's turning his back on what he's good at already, and he's off on his travels to discover new skills or to develop new abilities or to do things beyond what he would normally do, right? So he's turned his back on these 5 cups and he's going off to find something new, maybe new skills to develop, right? That kind of thing. So if we, depending on the question, and that I think is important because the question will determine to some extent what the meaning is. If somebody's question is, will I get a new job? You might find yourself suggesting that the person rewrites his or her resume or reorganizes the resume, because the 5 can be the hand which is writing, right? And if it's a job, then resumes are important. Because the person's walking away maybe from the old resume and they ought to reorganize it or rethink it. Or you might find yourself saying that what the person is already good at isn't going to be enough. So they ought to think about adding some new skill because they're turning their back on the 5 cups. And so let's say you're in California and you speak English. Maybe you ought to learn Spanish, or if you were to learn Spanish, it would open up a whole new range of possibilities for you, right? Because there's this whole Spanish community in California. Or if you like computers, let's say, okay, am I going to get a new job, or how can I get a new job? If you like computers, then maybe learn a new program. Or if you have spare time, volunteer. Instead of watching TV shows that you've already seen and didn't enjoy the first time around anyway. So you'll find that if you take this approach of looking at a card and asking yourself what it means or what part of the card or what the symbolism means or might mean, you're going to find that if you listen to your thoughts, you're going to come up with you're going to come up with meanings that you can use in readings. And another point is that let's say you look at this 5 and you think new skills and rewriting something. And you have to trust yourself as well that you're going to remember or say what's appropriate for that particular question, right? So that you don't have to tell the questioner everything that you know about that particular card. So let's say somebody wants to know about a new job and you suggest that they rewrite their resume. If you also remember the idea about the 5 representing new skills, then mention that as well. So rewrite the resume and develop new skills. But if the question is, am I going to get a new job, or how do I get a new job, and you mention about rewriting the resume, and then later you think, oh no, I ought to have told them about developing new skills as well. Don't start beating yourself up and thinking what you should have said or what you could have said later, because you have to trust that if you didn't say at the time, let's say at the time you said, rewrite your resume, but you didn't remember about developing new skills and you didn't mention developing new skills, you have to trust that you didn't remember it because you weren't supposed to say it for whatever reason. It was enough for the questioner to hear, rewrite the resume. They didn't need to be told or reminded, or the suggestion didn't need to be made that they should develop new skills. And the other way around, let's say you talk about this card and you mention about developing new skills and forget to talk about rewriting the resume. Don't worry about it later and think, I should have mentioned about rewriting the resume. It doesn't work like that. You have to trust that you know the subconscious mind, whatever it happens to be, you know what you could say, but you're not going to say everything. And the thoughts that come to the forefront of your mind that you actually talk about, that's what you were meant to deal with, or that's what the questioner was meant to hear, because it's going to answer their question. Otherwise, it can be too much. So don't. If you find later you wish you'd said something, don't beat yourself up because you didn't, because there were good reasons why you didn't say that at the time. Okay, I had more to say, but I'm looking at the time, and I think that's 11 minutes, and so I need to sort of finish up. But I'd like to make one last point, and I'll have to make a second video about the other points, and something else about the 5 and something about the 3. But I'd like to emphasize that what you tell the person ideally should be triggered by the card and not just something that you made up because your psychic sense told you. Because the psychic is okay, maybe, but half the time it's wrong, and we really ought not to depend on it. So let's say at some point you consider the 5 as representing the hand, and that represents skill and ability, right? Then somebody wants to know why they're always falling out with people. And so this card comes up, and you find yourself talking about or discussing taking a class, let's say, or learning about interpersonal relations and studying how people are built. And in that way, when you understand better what people are like, then you don't fall out with them to the same extent, or you don't try and change them, understanding that you really can't change people. So that's sort of getting the person to develop a new skill. And so that kind of information that you're giving the individual about developing a new skill is actually not a psychic impression. And it's not just something that you made up. It actually is triggered by the fact that sometime in the past, or sometime you consider that the 5 represents skill and ability, even though you may have forgotten that you ever had that thought, right? It doesn't matter, because it's that maybe the advice you're giving or the suggestion you're making for how the person should handle the situation comes from the card and the picture on the card, and you're not just plucking it out of the air and talking about something that may or may not be correct. So talking about developing a new skill is actually based on or thinking from the number 5 and the 5 relating to the hand and relating to skill. So I need to stop, I think, but I'll do yet another follow-up, because I wanted to talk more about the number 5. So maybe in the meantime, think about what the number 5 means to you, and I'll come back in a bit and we'll do a follow-up, because I have another 5 thing to talk about, and then we'll look at the 3. So for you, what does the 5 mean to you, and what can you do with that information, and what does the 3 suggest or mean to you, and what can you do with that, and how can you apply the symbolism of the number 3 to the meaning of this particular card?